If you're using Airtable to store CRM data, contact information, there's a good chance that you're also running some sort of email list in parallel. Likely that's going to be in a Mailchimp or an ActiveCampaign or a ConvertKit type of software. These are called email service providers, but the issue is they don't nicely talk to most CRMs. So how can you build that interaction so that your CRM in Airtable is instantly flowing and synced up with your email service provider and that you know exactly who is subscribed to your marketing emails? Well, that is exactly what we're going to be unpacking in this video. So if learning how to build smarter systems like this is of interest to you, stick around and let's get into it. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Gareth and this is Gap Consulting. It's our mission here to help you unlock the full potential of no-code tools. And in this video, we're going to be looking at some of my favorite no-code tools, namely Airtable for the database storage, the CRM component. We're going to be looking at Zapier for the automation, the third-party push information from one place to another. And then lastly, we're going to be using Mailchimp in our example. Now, full transparency up front, I am not an email marketer by trade, so I am not going to be getting into the compliance elements of this. So first and foremost, I want to stress that up front that you are going to be responsible for understanding how to properly and responsibly market with marketing emails in your area. So whatever rules and regulations apply to you, make sure that you understand those before going forward. But what I want to demonstrate here today is how we can get a reflection of that data from one place to another. Let's say somebody wants to unsubscribe from our email list. We should be able to push a button in our CRM and perform that action. Let's say a new contact is added to our CRM. We want them to then automatically be registered for our marketing emails, perhaps. So these are the types of automations that we're going to be taking a look at so that from one place, we are able to market downstream in our company so that we can have our CRM and yet market appropriately through our marketing platform and email. That's what we're going to be unpacking. Now, let's drop into Airtable first so that we understand what it is we're working with. So I've set up a demo database here, and this was just built for me by the AI co-builder in Airtable. So all I said was, hey, stand up a quick CRM for me, and I want to focus largely on contacts. And I want to highlight a couple of fields that are really going to drive our automation for us here. Number one is obviously our email address. If we have a contact without an email address, what's the value here? Obviously, we are going to be talking to an email service provider, in our example, Mailchimp. So of course, it's going to matter to us that we have an email address on file. So that's number one. Now, number two is the field here is it subscribed to email marketing. And this is what we call a Boolean field in Airtable. It's a yes or no. It's a checkbox. It's either checked or not. I'm here inside of an Airtable interface and I can just interact with this data. And what I want is for the automation to pick that up and say, wait a second, this person was unsubscribed, and then therefore unsubscribe them in Mailchimp. And ideally that could happen vice versa as well. We can go into Mailchimp and remove someone from marketing emails, for example, and then an automation would come back over here into Airtable and update that. So we have synced data basically between these sources. Now, of course, I also here have the ability to add contacts in Airtable. So I can pop in an email address, decide if they are subscribed to email marketing or not, and also update a contact status. Are they active, inactive, or pending? And then also connect them to different leads. So this is valuable if you have different accounts that you're working with. You have multiple people maybe that work at a particular organization. You can link people to the organization in Airtable. But we're getting a little deep into the data, and that's not the point of the video. What we really want to work with here is the email address. Are they subscribed to marketing? And then we also probably want to look at this contact status. So let's assume we only ever want to sync people with our marketing efforts here, at least on the email side, if they're active. If it's pending or inactive, obviously we don't want that. So we will use that output. So then the next component here is obviously Mailchimp. And I just stood up a free Mailchimp account here. And if we go over into our audience, we're going to see that we have nobody. There is no one in this audience except for me as an example here inside of the account. So it was just as I set it up. So let's now talk about how we can build an automation to add a new contact first and foremost. First, I'm going to open up Zapier. It's true that Airtable already has a lot of automation possibility, as do the email service providers like Mailchimp and ActiveCampaign and Constant Contact. But if I want to talk to different software across the cloud, then very often I will need to go into a tool like Zapier. So we build a Zap, which is basically an automated process. When certain things happen in one place, then we want to automate a workflow in somewhere else. And in this case, we're going to go into Airtable. So the triggering event, as we call it in Zapier automation, it will be a new contact added to Airtable. So right here, I'm establishing the rules. I'm saying when this trigger event occurs, and I need to choose what that event is. And for us, it can either be a new or updated record or flat out a new record. So let's do a new record. We're going to say whenever a new record is added to our CRM, that is going to then create the instance or the reflection of that in our marketing ESP or email service provider. Now I choose my account here, and I'm going to have to sync up a new account. So in another window here, it opens up and asks me what I want to sync. And the name of my base back here was CRM for tracking leads. So I will be doing a quick search for that back here. Let's go CRM for tracking leads. And I just need to give Zapier permission to talk to that data in Airtable. So we're set with that now. That's all synced up. On the next page, when I continue, I go into the configuration and I can choose the database. And of course, we only have given permission for that one database. And what table does this information live in? And this is going to be the table that we're watching to say when this record comes into existence, that is going to be the thing that triggers the automation. So here we can say, well, it's either our contacts or leads. And for us, the contact data lives in the contacts table. Obviously, I'll make that choice. Now we can choose a view. We can optionally limit this to a view. This is not required, but I do recommend it in this case. The reason for that is we don't want our automation to trigger for people who are not subscribed to our email marketing. So in our case, we want to ensure that it only triggers for people who are in that cohort. So let's head back into Airtable actually, and we're going to actually edit the app. Edit Airtable itself. Back in the data portion of Airtable, not the interfaces, we will build a view. So we can create a new view here, and I will call this sync for ESP, for email service provider. And in this view, we're going to set up some rules, some filters that only bring in certain data. I'm going to say, look, it's going to filter in wherever the email address is not empty. Because again, we talked about this. If the email address is empty, well then it doesn't help us one way or the other. We can't add that to our email service provider. And I can establish whatever rules I want to filter on here. So for example, I might say the subscribed to must be checked off. So if they have not subscribed to email marketing, I don't want to then add them to our Mailchimp account. Pretty straightforward, makes sense, but set up your rules here based on the way you've structured your Airtable data. And again, we are back in the data side of things, not in the interfaces. Zapier is going to be talking to the back end of Airtable, not the front end. So popping back into Zapier now, if we do a quick refresh on this, we will be able to now find that view. So I just did a refresh here in the upper right corner. And now when I look for views, I'm going to see that new view that we just built, the sync for ESP. And will I include any attachment content? I don't have attachments. I don't have files in this particular instance. I don't need to worry about this. Let's go ahead and continue here. And it's going to run a little test. Let's go ahead and test the trigger. And we will see that it pulls in some sample data. So these are sample records that it's actually finding in Airtable. So we've got Pirate at CSale 4. And let's flip back into Airtable now and confirm that yes, that does align with someone who would actually be in this scenario. So that is it for this step. We can pop back now into Zapier. We're going to set up the next step. First, we'll say continue with this particular record. And now in the next step, we're going to sync up to Mailchimp. So here we say, all right, look, we added a new contact and we know that they are subscribed to our email marketing because of our conditions. So we need to first connect our Mailchimp account. So let's go ahead and connect an account. I'm going to bring it up here. It's going to ask me for my information. I will just log in with Google, which I've done. It takes just a moment here. We're syncing it up with our account and giving Zapier permission to talk to the different cloud software that we're using, in this case, Mailchimp. Once we get authorized, we'll just say allow here, and that's going to wrap this up. It might take just a moment or two if this is the first time you're integrating. Once you're set up here, you'll get moved on to the next step, and we get to choose the action event here. So what are we doing? And for us, we can add a note to a subscriber, we can add a subscriber to a tag, or in our case, most importantly, we're adding or updating a subscriber. We're adding someone to our email service provider. And again, if you're not using Mailchimp, this same rules generally apply for all the different ESPs. Constant Contact, Active Campaign, Kit, they all operate in a similar way. You're going to get similar functionality here. So add a subscriber might not look exactly the same for the different options, the different software, but it's the same intent. So we're going to go ahead and do that. We're creating a new subscriber, and the first thing it's going to ask is what's that audience? If you have multiple accounts, they're going to show up here. I just have the one test account that we just established, so I make that selection. And the other required part, of course, is what is their email address? And we got this information from Airtable. So we can hit that plus over here and find the email address and just drop it in right here. And of course, if they were updating an email address, like if you were updating from an old email to a new email, you could update it here. That's not our use case. We are creating a new email subscriber. And then of course, this very important field right here, are they subscribed? Are they unsubscribed? Have they been cleaned, pending, or transactional? Obviously, in our particular example, they are subscribed. We're adding a new person to our subscription list. And if you opt in, or if you opt for the double opt-in, it's going to send an email to them asking them to confirm their subscription. This is a great idea if you want to make sure that you are in compliance and that your list is very clean. That is to say that, you're not adding new email addresses willy-nilly. You're making sure that the people have confirmed their interest in being on your marketing emails. So that's about it here. Those are the key must-haves for this, and then we can continue. And if you want, you can test this step. But of course, I used a fake email address here, which I don't want to test. So I will skip the test in our example. Highly recommend that you name this. So you would come up here to the top, say rename, and I'll say create new sub in ESP. And once you're happy with that, then you will just hit publish. So our Zap is now going live, our automated process, and we can go back into Airtable to test it. So let's flip back in over here, and actually from our interfaces, let's see, can we actually add a new email to our Mailchimp account? So easily enough, from our interface, let's go ahead and publish these up so that we can actually use them. We're going to add a new contact here. So I'm going to test this with my own. I will say Gareth plus 123 test at gapconsulting.io and subscribe to email marketing. Remember, our view is filtered on the condition that the email address exists and that this is checked. So let's go ahead and create this new contact, and we see that new contact added just here. We can flip back into Zapier now, and we can look to see the Zap runs here. Let's go ahead and refresh this to see if we have picked that up, and in fact we did. So here is that new task that has just been performed. We identified the new record in Airtable, it was in that particular view, and we added a new subscriber to Mailchimp. So if we flip into Mailchimp now, and we refresh our Mailchimp account, we will expect to find that we have that new subscriber added, and there it is, Gareth plus 123 test at gapconsulting.io. By the way, if you're new to testing out some email marketing, maybe what you want to do is test a few on the same email address. All you need to do is right before the @ symbol, because my email here is gareth@gapconsulting.io. Right before that @ symbol, make sure you hit that plus, and then you can add whatever gibberish you want to after that, and it will be treated as a unique email address. And yet, when anybody sends email there, it will actually go to your inbox. So that's a nice little hack anytime you're testing out any email marketing. Okay, so now we've got this here. What happens if somebody wants to unsubscribe? Well, there's a couple of ways they could do it. The most common way is for them to unsubscribe from marketing emails inside the email itself. Because when you send an email from an ESP, there's always an opt-out button, right? And that's legally required in most cases. So this is the most common way that people will unsubscribe. But occasionally, people will reply to my emails and say, please unsubscribe me. And of course, I want to accommodate that request. I want to keep my data synced as well. So I want to make sure that whatever I have back here in Airtable is an accurate reflection. So if this person wants to opt out, I want to make sure to opt them out on the marketing side and vice versa. And we can build these automations. Let's take a look at the first one for our example here. We can establish an automation that says if this is unchecked for one of the contacts in our database, then we will go through and unsubscribe them from our email service provider. So let's build that automation now. We'll flip back into our Zapier, and I've already organized these in a folder. You'll see I have created an example folder. Strongly recommend that you use folders to stay organized, because when you have 100 different zaps, it can be overwhelming if they're all over the place. So put all your email zaps in one place, and let's create a new one in this folder. So I'll create a new zap here. And this time we will choose a slightly different trigger inside of Airtable. So in Airtable, we will uncheck that box. So we will say when a record is updated, and specifically that the box is unchecked. So let's figure out how we can build that exact criteria. Now, first we have to integrate back with our Airtable account. So we'll make that selection here and continue on. And when we go to our base, you'll see that we only have that one base again. And of course, what table is this? Again, it is our leads table. But here's where things are different with this trigger. It's looking for the last modified time column. And this particular column will update when one or more fields is changed. Let's flip back into Airtable and I'll show you exactly what this means. We'll go back to our data now. And here we are, we've got all of these, different fields that we had set up. And what I want to do is build this last modified, but specifically I want to watch that subscriber status. So I'll say subscriber status last modified. And the field type is called last modified time. And rather than looking at all of the fields in our table here, I'm going to dial into that one specific field, the subscribed to email marketing field. So if this particular field is edited, you can see these are the times, the last times that that field was edited. When that field gets edited, i.e. somebody checks the box or unchecks the box, then this time right here will be reflected. And then similarly to last time where we created a view, we can create a new one that says unsubscribe from email or ESP. And let's go ahead and create that view. Similarly, this time we're going to apply filters where the email address is not empty, but we're going to, in this case, say that they have unchecked the box. They are not subscribed. So what does this mean? If we flip back into Zapier, you'll see that we have to choose the last modified time column. Now, since we just built that field, we need to refresh this information first. So always come up and refresh your fields. It basically pulls Airtable again. So any new things you added are going to be found. But when I go here, I still can't find the field. And that's because I chose the wrong table. It's not leads, it's contacts. So if you make those mistakes, if you start to go a little cross-eyed like me, that's how we fix it. Just take it one step at a time. Now we will find the last modified time column because it lives in the contacts table. So the final part here, again, is to make sure that we're not unsubscribing people. So just because that box is checked, back here, the last modified, this field is going to reflect whenever someone edits the box for are they subscribed, yes or no. This will change every time I update the status, right? So if I'm over here and I check it, well, then this gets reflective, right? Or reflects the new time. And if I go back and I uncheck it, then this will update again. And of course, this did update, but it's updating seconds rather than minutes, so you don't see it. But it's going to be triggering either way. So that's why we want to use that view as well to say, hey, only if someone is unsubscribed, only then do we want to trigger this automation. So let's also select that view here, unsubscribe from ESP, and let's continue. And as you would imagine, very similar to how we did this last time, we can go ahead and test the trigger, pull in some sample data, assuming that we have somebody in that view. And here it is. It is Wizard at Spell Mail. Let's go back to Airtable to confirm. That's the only record in this view, so that's all we would expect to find. And most importantly, now we will continue with that record. And back into Mailchimp, we need to update the status of that user. So again, depending on the ESP you're using, this is going to look a little different. But in our case, we want to edit or update that subscriber. So let's go ahead and select that Alternatively, we could also choose to archive that subscriber, and that would perform a similar action for us, right? So again, just make sure that you go through the different options for your email service provider. That way you're taking the right action, but the idea, the concept is the same here, right? So in our case, let's go with we'll go with the add or update subscriber. So I'm going to go back and find that here, and we'll continue. And so here it's going to say, what's that audience? Again, I only have the test account. What is that email address? We got this information again from the triggering action. So it's called email address. We got it from Airtable. And what we care about is removing them, unsubscribing them in this case. So we can mark them unsubscribed. It doesn't matter if they're double opt-in or not because they're already on the email list and we're removing them from it. We are going to update that existing, and let's continue. Those are the only requirements for us. Again, I'm going to skip the test and we'll publish here. And once that goes live, it's going to take just a moment. We can flip back into Airtable and test this from our interface again. So here we are. My test account here is active, and all I want to do is deactivate it. Click of a button, that should remove me from the marketing emails, right? So now back into Mailchimp, we can refresh. Nothing's going to be done just yet because very likely Zapier hasn't picked that up quite yet. So instead, let's flip into Zapier. We can go into our Zap runs here on the left-hand panel, and you can see that that just ran. If you ever need to push this automation through, by the way, if it's not running quickly enough for you, in the upper right corner of Zapier, you've got the option to manually run it. And right here, we can pop in and say, how did this work? And there enough, sure, we unsubscribed them. That is their current status. If we go back to Mailchimp and refresh, we should see that the demo account is unsubscribed. And that's exactly what we find. Here it is, Gareth +123 test is now unsubscribed. That's it. That's the full integration. So we've now got our Mailchimp working with our CRM, we are integrated, and as people come into our business, we are able to sync them up with our marketing efforts. Whew, I know we unpacked a lot of information here, but I hope this is like a flavor for you to see how far down the rabbit hole you can go with third-party automation, leveraging the power of Zapier and Airtable. If you got a lot of value from this video, I would love it if you could give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. If there are questions that we did not get to, swing by our website. We have a ton of resources available to you. But most importantly, keep on building.